Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to another edition of DIY Money.
DIY money.
A Howard on the YouTube video.
I hate this, Quinn.
Why?
Why do we sign up for video?
Why?
Because I don't know. I'm like, what do I do with my hands?
Just talk. You can be Italian. This can be your opportunity.
That's what Logan did last week. Not to call him out. He was like, "What's up?" The people listening to audio right now.
You need to adjust your mic a little bit though, so we can see
Higher?
your whole face. No, down and adjust a little bit.
There I
you go.
am.
There you go.
Good. And you got the tissues ready, handy?
Well, listen, I love the new weather, 70 degrees, except when it's 30 it's like 30 degrees in the morning, and then it's 70.
Like 50. What are you talking about?
Well, this morning it was. Yesterday it was like 35, whatever. We have these 40-degree swings, and it's like my allergies, sinuses are absolutely killing me. Like never before. Never have I had it this worse. I get allergy shots. I also bit myself in the backside because this winter I stopped taking allergy shots. I was going to try to hack it. I was like, the minute the weather turns, I'll start going back. And I planned it. I didn't plan it correctly, so I'm far too gone. My last allergy shot was like in December. So I showed up for an allergy shot. They're like, hey, we haven't seen you in 3 months.
What's your name again?
I was like, well, so what? Like, just I'm the same guy. They're like, nah, you got to come in for an appointment. You got to blah, blah, blah. So that bit me in the backside. Do
they
that.
change when they give you the shots? Is it always the same thing, or do they change it based on what's in the area?
No, the mixture is the same based on what I'm allergic to and this area. But the dosage is different, and then the concentration is different, which I think is a racket, candidly. I think is a total racket. I think it's like, don't get me started on this. Don't get me started on this.
I kind of want to get you started.
No, do not get me started on this. But anyways, I've taken allergy shots for probably 35 years. I probably have taken them, well, even longer. Since I was probably 8 to 10 years old, I started taking allergy shots. Moved to Kentucky. Oh, my gosh. The only time in my life for 2 years I lived in Florida, no allergy shots. It was glorious. So I'm just dying today of allergies. So I apologize. My sound, I apologize for those of you watching on YouTube.
If you start crying.
If I start crying, I got to blow my nose.
It's the allergies for sure.
All right, let's do some odds and ends. First of all, podcast questions. Send in the questions. We need them. Podcast at DIYmoney.org. That's podcast at DIYmoney.org.
We got to get some juniors, too.
We got to get some juniors.
If you got a junior, send it in. Come on.
I got giggly the last podcast we did because of Logan's just smoking meat. And I just thought, I don't know why, I just thought that was hysterical. So I thought I'd just bring it up again. He was like, I'm just loving smoking my meat.
Logan's just rolling his eyes.
Like, wow, okay.
It's only weird because you made it weird.
I know.
I stand behind that.
All right, let's go. We got a question from Katie today. Katie, what do you got?
DIY! Hey, DIY Money team. Thanks for all you do. My name is Katie from Bonnie Lake, Washington, and my question today is about a simple IRA versus a Roth IRA. I'm the pastor of a small church with a few employees, and I want to set them up with a retirement account option. I know that a simple IRA has lower startup costs and matches required from me as their employer, which is good because we don't have a huge budget to begin with. But other than that, can you tell me the pros and cons of a simple IRA versus a Roth? And is the simple IRA also contributed to with after-tax dollars like the Roth is? Also, since we're all church employees, I know that some retirement accounts have certain benefits that pastors can take advantage of. So if you have the time to speak to that too, that would be great. Thank you guys so much. Love what you do.
Katie, great question. Thanks so much for sending that in. So this is interesting. You kind of opened up a big can of worms here, but I'll do my best, and I know Allie will make it sound even better. So first of all, if you're looking at enacting something for your employees, the Roth is really off the table. The Roth would be an individual sort of responsibility. I mean, I guess you could kind of have an unwritten rule like, hey, I'm going to pay you extra, but I want it to go into the Roth. But you can't really mandate that. And it's not a business or a nonprofit or a church sort of thing, meaning it's not governed by you. It's governed by the individual. So again, I would try to shy away from that. I would certainly encourage your staff to take advantage of Roth IRAs and so forth. But as far as what you are looking to do, I don't think that would really be part of the equation. The two retirement plans that you would be looking at specifically, you brought up one, which is a simple IRA, which can be used in churches or nonprofits, or a 403B. A 403B would be the IRS code that governs a employee-sponsored plan like a 401k, which you've heard us talk about ad nauseum. For a small entity like yourself, and this is, do your own due diligence, talk to your tax advisor, but I would probably go with the simple IRA. We've actually done this with another church in a different location in Texas, where they wanted to implement something sounds very similar. We looked at all the options, and the simple was the best for them. And it was the best for them because it was extremely cost effective. We didn't have all of the cumbersome costs that come with a 403B, and they didn't have the size and the staff and so forth that warranted that. So the simple IRA made a lot of sense. Now, when you set up a simple, there are two options you have as the employer to set it up. You can set up one where you give 2% of your employee's salary to their simple, irrespective of what they put in. So you would be putting in 2% across the board. Or you can elect to match up to 3% of their contributions. So think of it this way, 2% for everybody, no matter what they put in, or up to 3% for only those people that are looking to contribute. Personally, I would probably go towards the 3%. That's just me personally, so that you encourage savings on their end, which is what you're trying to do anyways. And if somebody doesn't want to do it, you're just not giving it to them outright. So I like the 3% match. Now, contribution limits, and maybe Allie will talk about this, are going to be different in the simple than they would be in a 403B. But again, you don't have that cost. And then on the back side of this, as far as retirement goes, a caveat, it's important, especially for you if you're the lead pastor there. The caveat is if you retire with a 403B, you can withdraw funds from a 403B and apply part of that or all of that, depending on your personal situation, towards your housing allowance, which then is not taxable for income purposes. So that's a big benefit inside the 403B that you would not have in the simple. But again, at this stage, it would be very difficult, I think, it sounds like a small organization, to implement the 403B. The other thing she asked about, I'll let you touch on, Allie, is after-tax or pre-tax contributions regarding a simple versus a Roth.
Yeah, so shedding one more layer there, the contribution limits, it's more than double, actually, in the simple. You can do 17,600, I believe, in a simple IRA each year. And then there's always random rules for catch-up, and now there's like a super catch-up, so could be potentially more than that. The Roth is 7, so a lot more opportunity for your employees to be able to contribute more than just that $7,000 a year in the simple.
Right, but I've kind of taken that Roth off the table. So what you'd really be comparing is the simple versus the 403B. And the 403B would have a higher contribution
like
limit, right, versus the simple.
Right.
So we can compare apples to apples with contributions, but you know, people who have simples at their workplace could still open a Roth on their own if they wanted to.
Yeah, and the other thing you could explore too, and these are new, I call Charles Schwab like once a month to check on the status, but there's actually a new simple Roth option too. So the big difference between those two in tax treatment, and you kind of touched on this, is the simple IRA. When you contribute into that, you get a tax deduction for each dollar you put in, very similar to a traditional IRA, it's a traditional simple. The Roth is after tax, which means you don't get that nice tax deduction this year, but then anything in there will grow tax-free, and when you start to take funds out of that later, then you get a huge tax benefit because they don't tax those earnings. So that can be massive. Typically, that makes sense if you're in a situation where you're in a lower tax bracket now than you will be in the future. So you'd rather pay the tax at your low rate than pay it at a higher rate later. So I would think through for yourself, if you're exploring simple versus Roth simple, what makes sense in a tax bracket for you, and are you going to make more income in the future in retirement as you're drawing off of your retirement accounts, or are you making more income now? So that's what you want to look at there. I think you did a good job talking about the housing allowance. We won't get too far into that. We could do a separate question on that in the future if there are a lot of ministers out there. But if you wanted to go through kind of the headache, I would say, of setting up the 403B, there are some specific tax opportunities for you for being a minister in a nonprofit. But again, huge episode there.
I want to add one thing. So the actual practical steps, Katie, of setting this up would probably involve an advisor. And you could search for maybe one in your area, and you would really want to know the fees associated with them setting up the simple IRA for you. Because again, I think, and I don't quote me on this, but maybe you could go to like a Vanguard or something like this and set up a plan. I'm not sure. I've never seen one that way, but it's usually administered through an advisor. For example, we do this for clients that we have that might have a small business, and so we would then set that up, at Charles Schwab. That's our primary custodian that we use, and then each individual has a simple IRA. On your end, the difficulty is, it's similar to a 403B, is that you have to then, every time you have payroll, you then need to submit this form that basically says, this is the amount that goes into everybody's account based on their election and their deferral amount, and it's going to be pulled out of our bank account and so forth. So there's some tasks in there. And then thereafter, the individual basically has the opportunity to direct this themselves. We would probably advise they just select a target date fund, set it and forget it, because you don't necessarily want your employees going there and day trading or whatever. But they could, interestingly enough. So there are some steps involved. I would probably outsource that. If it's up to me, I would probably look in your area for a good fiduciary advisor and just say, hey, do you help with simple IRAs, and what do you charge for that, and what, et cetera. And important to note that it would be nice if that same person provided additional education for your employees as well. So as part of their task, they could come in, they could do some education, et cetera, or just replay DIY money episodes. That's fine too. But if you go this route yourself, if you're like, no, I'm going to self-direct this myself, then you would need to find the custodian, such as a Vanguard or a Fidelity or something. You would need to set this up. And you could do it, I'm sure. I'm sure you could figure it out. But I would probably start looking for someone in the area to help. That's my 2 cents on that, the actual practical implementation of it.
Yeah, because investment-wise, you didn't exactly say this, but you talked about it quite a bit. The 403B, you're going to have specific funds your employees can be in. The simple IRA, they can be in anything an IRA can be in, which is, I think, less like tangible, right? There are specific things you can't be, but for the most part, IRAs you can be in mutual funds, ETFs, individual stocks, you name it. You can have real estate. Like, there's a million different ways you can do it.
This final note I'll add here is, if you're listening to this podcast and again, this question was specific towards Katie and the ministry that she's in, but if you're in a small business, many people don't know that the simple IRA is a great option if you wanted to start a plan for your employees without having to jump to the cost and the expense and the administration of a 401k. The simple IRA, it's called simple for a reason. It's a fantastic opportunity for a small business to implement prior to probably a 401k. Usually the progression that I've seen is somebody starts a business, they typically start a SEP IRA, Simplified Employee Pension. If they start getting a lot of employees, they might move to a simple IRA, and then at some point down the line, if the business continues to grow, it probably makes sense to get a 401k. Those are usually the steps in the progression of a small business owner implementing a retirement plan. Great question, Katie. Hopefully you found some value in that answer. We'll send you a $25 Amazon gift card. All Katie did was jump on her smartphone, sent the audio file to podcast@DIYmoney.org. Keep those questions coming because we need them, and then we'll send you a $25 Amazon gift card if we use it on the show. Remember, friends, the secret to wealth is pretty simple. Live on less than you make, invest the rest, and do so for a very long time. Make it a great one.